Hello and welcome to another edition of another book review. This week I'll be reviewing Red at the Bone by Jacqueline Woodson. I'll talk very briefly about the author, go into a spoiler-free overview of the plot, talk about what I liked about the book, what I didn't like about the book, who I'd recommend the book to, and finish off with what I'll be reading for next time. Jacqueline Woodson is a very prolific author, has been writing since roughly the mid-90s. She's won several awards. Mostly she writes in, I would say, the young adult and middle grade genres. She also does a lot of illustrated children's work as well. She's won a ton of Newbery Awards. This book is one of a handful of adult novels that she's written, and I would say it's more of a character-driven novel than it is a plot-driven novel. And most of the tension in the book revolves around a mother and a daughter. The mother's name is Iris, and we learn at the beginning of the novel that she has had something of a strange relationship with her daughter. The book starts with I don't know what it would be called. All the characters in the novel, or the main characters in the novel, are all African American, and I don't know what the equivalent would be. I don't know if it'd be a cotillion or be a debutante ball. The book starts off at something of a debutante ball where Melody is coming out as an adult, and that kind of kicks off the history of this family. And you have Audrey, who is her father, who is raised by his single mother, who had it's never really fully, I think, explained what she had, but it appears that she had something of a mental illness, and they were very, very hand-to-mouth, very poor people. And then you have Iris's parents, who are still together and are something more of they have a little bit more creature comforts in the way of having some savings. And so the book is really an examination of Audrey and Iris's relationship, a deterioration of that, and then also the estrangement between Melody and Iris. And the book takes place roughly from I guess Iris and Audrey were together. I would say something like the mid 90s, maybe the early 90s is when they get together. And then in the year 2001 is when this ball kind of takes place. And so you have kind of most of the book revolves around that timeline, I'd say from the mid to late 80s to the early 2000s. And it does go a little bit beyond that, but that's the bulk of the novel. It's very, very much a character-driven novel, and the style of the book is told in, I'd say, something approaching like a William Faulkner or Toni Morrison. It's not quite as difficult to follow as either of those two authors, but it is something where you have this story that's being told kind of out of time and in the heads of multiple characters, and you're trying to piece together kind of the family history. I like that the Jacqueline Woodson is skilled enough to be able to do that, where you're not overly confused about whose viewpoint you're in for very long. I like that she included this character who clearly had some mental health issues, and I think that character is treated somewhat sympathetically. I appreciated that. I think that the relationship that Audrey has with his daughter, I felt was very real, and I like the fact that she was able to show this man who probably could have had reasons to bounce, decides to stick around for his daughter and makes that kind of the cornerstone of his life is the raising of his daughter. I thought that was nice. If I was going to say things that I didn't like as much about the novel, there's some things that kind of were borderline stereotypes. There is a character who is a heroin addicted jazz musician who pops up very briefly in the novel. I thought that could have been maybe handled a little bit more deftly, with a little bit more originality there. I think there's a drug dealing character later in the novel who kind of just pops up as something of a temptation for Audrey. Doesn't kind of serves as kind of a subplot that doesn't also really go anywhere. So that was kind of the issue. There's some things that just kind of get brought up, and it's really hard because it's not a plot-driven novel. It's like what to do with these characters. Are they supposed to add thematically to things? Is it just to show the inner workings of these characters and their lives, a greater understanding of who they were? And so I kind of went back and forth with that. My biggest complaint with the novel, and I felt oftentimes kind of pretty bored by the novel, simply because it's a relatively short novel, and I think it gets by on the strength of its writing and the ability for it to jump between characters, and it's paced well enough to where you can just kind of find yourself just kind of getting through it. But I found myself bored during stretches just because I didn't have a really strong I didn't care about any of the characters because I think their motivations were oftentimes very, very internal. Most of the book is focused on this family and their own relationship to one another. There's not a ton of external focus as far as aspirations or hopes and dreams of these characters. So I found myself at times that left me a little cold. Uh, Iris, who's a character who kind of goes away. Most of the book is set in Brooklyn, New York. There's a little bit set in Ohio when Iris is at college. Even that stuff to me was kind of like, it was difficult at times to understand what was for this character, of what she was actually trying to aspire to do. I wish that had been kind of made a little bit more clear, and why she was aspiring to do these things. But at the heart of the book is really the reconciliation between these two, and if it's possible, I wish there had been more detail on Melody herself. She kind of gets short shrift in the book of exactly, again, her motivations, her hopes and dreams. There's something that's kind of thrown in it, kind of something of a bomb towards the end of the novel, and you're like, I don't really understand if this is supposed to change things. This is supposed to be more thematic. It doesn't really make sense, in my opinion, for this character, but part of that is because you haven't told me more about the character. So there was some frustrations with the book. I think it could have been. I think the characters feel a little two-dimensional sometimes, because they're only really seem to be focused on this really small part of their life, which is their relationship with each other. And most people, I think, have that family dynamic as well, but they also want and aspire to do other stuff. And so I think for the telling of the story, as far as this family, it was interesting, but I think I would have also been benefited if I had said, okay, well, this is this character and this is what they want. Externally, outside of their family, this is what they want. And I think that would have been beneficial to the book. There's some tragedy in the book, where there's ties to the Tulsa race riots of the early 1900s. There's ties to 9/11. And so your mileage may vary about how much you're interested in reading about that. It's not something they're not really, in my opinion, they don't spend a ton of time talking about these things. It's more of an allusion to them. But I know that may be difficult for some people. I would recommend this book to people who want something that is nonlinear. They want something that's more of a character-driven novel and less of a plot-driven novel. If you're someone who wants to learn about characters and the way they think and their internal thoughts, and some of the contradictions that people have in their lives, and how history tends to repeat itself in between generations, there's a lot about that in the book. If you want something that's more of characters who feel believable, who have external hopes and dreams that aren't completely focused on their family, this book doesn't give you as much of that. At least for me, I didn't get as much of that as I would have liked. And sometimes the characters came off a little samey. I wish there had been more of like I said, I wish we had a little bit more Melody from her background, and there's kind of a demarcation, understanding how Melody and Iris are different. We don't always get that. You can piece together something like a plot in the book, but again, it's something you have to work at. To me, it wasn't very super difficult to put something together. There are times where I'm like, what year did this take place in? Does this really make sense for this timeline? Sometimes it's a little iffy, but otherwise, I would recommend this book if any of those things sound interesting to you. That's Jacqueline Woodson, Red at the Bone. Next time I'm going to be reading Sleepwalk by, I believe, Dan Choen. And until next time, please, if you've enjoyed this, like and subscribe to the video. I'll have my Twitter link below there too if you want to follow me on Twitter. Till next time, bye.